All right, lag. Everybody wants to get tons of this lag. Really sharp angle here like we see with some of the top players, and then release the heck out of that to get tons of speed. That's what all the tour players are doing. So why is it so daggone hard to do it in our own swing? That's exactly what I'm going to talk about here today, and I have a really cool piece of technology that's going to help us to see this in a new and different way. Now there's one thing that's very important that you do. Click that subscribe button. I have a ton of great videos coming out for you this year. I want to help you with your game, and the only way you're going to get notified when I release those new videos is if you're a subscriber. While you're at it, click that thumbs up button, hit the notifications bell, and post your comment below. I'd love to hear from you. This is a company called Hack Motion. That's H-A-C-K-M-O-T-I-O-N, Hack Motion. And it has two inertial sensors that go on one on my forearm, just above my wrist, and then one on the back of my glove here. And what you do is you take out your phone, it works right with your phone, you calibrate it so it knows where flat is, and then from there, when I move my wrist, you're going to be able to see this move in real time, and when I make a swing and hit a shot, it records that so I can see exactly what my wrist did. So it tracks not only this up and down type motion, or if you're looking at it from this way, this is called wrist extension, this is called wrist flexion. So if my palm's toward my body, that's wrist flexion. If my palm's away from my body, that's wrist extension. Also tracks radial deviation, that's this up motion, ulnar deviation, and then also rotation. So when I have my pronation and supination. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that players make when they're trying to get more lag is that they try to get this up and down. This would be radial deviation here, create a really sharp angle there. And what happens with this as I try to bring my wrist up as much as I can, or my thumb up this way, my wrist naturally starts to go into extension. So if you try to get as much of this angle as you can, you're going to notice that if you bend your knuckles back, again, this is extension, my knuckles back toward my elbow, that's the easiest way to get this sharpest angle here. You're also going to notice when you're doing this, I can't get much of an angle there. I mean, I'm really not getting a really sharp angle between my forearm and the club. So why does this look like so much lag when I'm swinging the club? So two problems there. Problem number one, when I try to get as much of that as I can in the downswing, really get that arm cocked back or that wrist cocked back, a lot of times I'm going to cup my wrist. I'm going to have my knuckles back to my elbow. And what that does, when I cup my wrist, it opens the face. So when I try to get a lot of this lag, the face is wide open, and all of a sudden, where's the ball go? A mile to the right. It's really frustrating. Piece number two, the problem there is this angle isn't very sharp. This doesn't look like a ton of lag. How do I get this angle where I get lots of lag in the downswing? I'm gonna go over both of those, but first, let me hit a couple shots. In this first one, I'm gonna do the wrong way. So I'm gonna try to really create this sharp angle of lag. I'm gonna cut my wrist. I'm gonna get this club in a steep angle. My face is gonna be open, not gonna be good. Let's go ahead and try that out, and let's see what happens here. Oh wow, that ball, so that ball started over the trees and then it went another 50, 60 yards. That is, I would say it's out of bounds or in the water, but it probably went, another 50 yards past that. That's the sensation of me getting this wrist to cock this big angle of lag, but my wrist is cupped. So it's wide open, and if you're looking from this angle, the face is wide open there. That's gonna block a mile to the right. Now let me go ahead and hit a good one with the right way to do this lag, and then we're gonna talk about some of these numbers on my Hack Motion sensor. So here, I'm gonna get the right way to get lag. I'm gonna lag the club. This is gonna be nice and flat. I'm gonna hit a good shot here. At least attempt at a good shot. All right, there we go. Right down the left side of the fairway. On that one, I got the lag, but I tried to get this wrist coming flat or even a little bit bowed coming through contact. So let's take a look at my numbers and let's talk about the drill that you should do to really get this in your own swing. So if I pull up my Hack Motion app, all right, when I'm looking at my good swing, at address, I have a little bit of what's called extension. So again, when I'm setting up this golf ball, the angle between my forearm and my wrist is angled back a little bit like that. What people would call cupped traditionally in golf speak. So there's a little bit of an angle there. If I look at that on my Hack Motion sensor, I have about 19 degrees of extension at address. As I get to the top, I actually still have a little bit of a cup in my wrist. Now, a lot of times what appears to be a flat wrist at the top will still read as a little bit of cup here because of the way you're just atomically your wrist is put together. You're not typically going to see players that are perfectly flat, and if they are, it's going to look a little bit even bowed at the top. It's going to have the appearance of being bowed. If you look at that, if I line up the back of my forearm and the back of my wrist, that looks bowed, but you'll see how these sensors are kind of level with each other. So at the top of the swing, 29 degrees, still had a little bit of an angle between my forearm and my wrist there. That's completely fine. The big thing here is as I start my downswing, this started to flatten out. It started to get into that bowed type position. So if you look halfway down, now my wrist is starting to flatten out and get bowed, and more importantly, that's squaring up the face. So the more I bow my wrist, the more that turns the face to close it, to square it up. That helps me to hit it a lot straighter. And at impact, I had 16 degrees of what would be called a bowing action, which would be wrist flexion. So we'll see if I pause at impact, I'm gonna have an angle between my forearm and my wrist. And then after that, my wrist goes ahead and folds up and goes back into extension again. That's completely fine. So essentially what's happening at address, wrist is slightly cupped. At the top, it's slightly cupped. As you make your downswing and go to impact, it bows, and then you go ahead and release it as it comes on through. You're not trying to hold that through there like that. You go ahead and let that go. It's completely fine. When I'm looking at ulnar and radial deviation, so again, my forearms being down, that would be what's called ulnar deviation, my hands down. This would be radial deviation. So as I'm setting up, I have 37 degrees of ulnar deviation. So if I'm looking from this down the line view, my hand is angled down like that as I'm gripping the club in ulnar deviation. As I go to the top of the swing, I have a little bit of that wrist cock, or a little bit of the wrist setting upwards. That's radial. I go to 17 degrees of radial deviation, which basically means my wrist goes up in that direction as I go to the top of the swing. And then as I come back down to impact, again, it releases and my wrist is down again, 19 degrees down. So it's pretty cool that you can make a swing. You can look at this little device and start to see exactly what your wrist is doing by the numbers. I may feel like I'm bowed, or I may feel like I have my hand angled down like that, but now I can see the real numbers. And if I want to get more bow, then I can play around with the feelings and see how the numbers adjust, see how the numbers change on here. That's one of the best ways to learn, is really trying to exaggerate these numbers. And even a cooler thing, I won't get into that, but the cooler thing on here is when we look at the rotational speed, how much my wrist releases. And sometimes having a little bit more wrist rotation can add some club head speed. That's completely fine. A lot of times players think I'm gonna hold everything straight toward the target. That's really not what happens. Even the players that are the most square through contact, that club face is still rotating on through impact. So now let's take a look at my incorrect one, the one where I really got too much of that cup in the downswing. And this is where people get in trouble. Remember, that ball went a mile to the right. When I tried to get that lag in the downswing, my wrist went into what's called cupping or extension. My knuckles went back to my elbow. I have this big angle there, and now my face is wide open. That's a perfect situation to hit the ball way to the right. When I was at address, I had 25 degrees of that wrist extension. When I went to the top, as I felt like I was gonna get into this angle of really getting that lag, it went all the way up to 66 degrees. So my wrist was really angled back at the top. As I went to impact, remember I was getting almost 16, 18 degrees of bow. I didn't have as much bow. I only had 8 degrees of bow when I came into impact with this one. So basically my face was 8 degrees more open than what I was normally felt it being open there. And then the same thing if we go into radial and ulnar, some of those numbers switch too. But the main thing there is to show, and I can see it clear as day, no doubt about it, that as I went into my downswing, my wrist was much more extended and the face was much more open than it would have been with my normal swing. So if I kind of even take it halfway into the downswing, almost coming into impact, my wrist was still in 17 degrees of this cupping or wrist extension. That's really not in a good position to be in. So given that, let's talk about what we do about it now. It's nice to know that this wrist should be flat. Why does this make a difference? Well, here's the thing that I think that a lot of people mistake with this. You try to get this angle as sharp as you can get it because you think, man, that's still just not very much. And as you try to get more and more and sharpen this up and sharpen this up, there's no other way but then to cup this wrist and get into that extension. I can really only make this sharp angle when I crank my wrist that way. When I go with my wrist flatter, now you'll see how I don't get as good of an angle. And you think, well, you know, if this is my angle, there's no way I can lag the club. Well, in reality, if I go ahead and I have this angle where my wrist is flat, watch what happens from the face-on view when my club now goes shallower. Look how that looks like a much sharper angle. This doesn't look like very much lag when the club is straight up and down. This looks like a really good amount of lag. In reality, my wrist is flat and that's the angle the entire time. All I'm doing is shallowing that out flatter to the camera. So it's a bit of an optical illusion with all that lag. That's really the secret there. We can't crank our wrist back like that. We need to feel like our wrist is flat in the downswing. Here's a great drill, probably one of the best drills to get this as quickly as possible. Go down to the last parallel in the downswing. Again, I'm opening my body. I feel like this is a real swing. My right heel's coming off the ground, my hips are opening. At last parallel, if my face is open like that, I am in trouble. This is gonna be death. Look how cupped my wrist is. Look how much extension it's in there. That's not good. That's like the one I hit a mile to the right. If I take that face and I point it down to the ground, now I'm in a lot of bowing. This is a great position. This is what you'll see the tour players doing. They're flattening that wrist in the downswing. So make a couple practice swings here where we pause last parallel and then square that face up, see the face come down, and then swing on through. That's gonna get you in a familiar feeling of bowing that wrist in the downswing. And you'll be surprised when you do that, all of a sudden this lag starts looking a little bit better. Now because you're squaring up the face better, you don't mind having that club lag behind. When this face is wide open like that, your natural reaction is to flip the heck out of it to try to get it to square up. Once I start squaring up the face, then I have more lag, I release it farther in front, all those good things are happening. So do a good 20 to 30 reps, pausing, last parallel, getting the face to the ground, and then swinging on through. Then try to recreate that in your real swing. I guarantee you, you're gonna have more lag, it's gonna feel more comfortable on your wrist, and best of all, you're gonna hit a lot more solid and a lot more straight. Now here's the deal, I don't want us to stop here. This is a great idea, understanding how to use the wrist properly to create lag, but there's another piece to this. One of the pieces there is making sure that I don't set the club in the incorrect manner in the backswing. If I set it wrong in the backswing, I'm dead in the water. I'm not gonna be able to create that lag. I have a great video on this and I'm gonna play a preview of that here in a second. All you need to do to watch that full video, just click the card that pops up on your screen. If you don't see that card, go ahead and down below in the description, click that link and you'll be able to get instant access to that video. When you pair that up with this wrist angle we talked about today, man, you're gonna have tons of lag and you're gonna be cranking the ball out there. I'll see you in the lag video. Hi guys and welcome back. I'm Ballard and in today's video we're going to talk about one of the absolute worst drills for creating lag. It's a very common drill that I see, and in this drill what we're going to do is we're going to set the wrist very early to create an angle of lag, and then we're going to try to hold this throughout the swing. It's one of the worst things that you can do to build lag. I'm going to talk about the science behind why this is the case, and I'm also going to give you a great drill to help you improve your lag, all in this video. Let's go ahead and get started. If I do it this way versus holding that position, exact same thing happens when we're building the lag in the golf swing. So what we want to do is throughout the swing, I want to have a very low and wide takeaway. So I'm not going to set my wrist early at all. If you look at a lot of the top players, you look at Adam Scott, very wide takeaway, not very much wrist set at all. You look at Rory McIlroy, look at Tiger Woods. All these players are using a wide takeaway and not getting very much wrist set, so that later in the swing, as we start down, we can increase this wrist set, and we're really only going to max out this angle of lag for a split second in the downswing. Okay, so a three-step drill here. Now, as we get started with this, I want to remind you that the fulcrum in this golf club for getting a massive amount of lag is right at the end of the golf club. This is where I want my hinge point to be. I want to use the full length of